Hello and welcome to video number 7, which is chapters 10 and 11 of the book Charlotte's Web. We're reading Charlotte's Web by E.B. White with pictures by Garth Williams, and I hope you've read the other 6 videos along with us. Today we're reading chapter 10, and before we start we're going to look at some vocabulary words as well as some questions that will be asked at the end of the video. Gullible. Gullible is someone who is easily fooled, someone who believes anything. Surly means grouchy or rude, not nice. Bestirred means to become active, to start moving after being still for a while. Descend means to start somewhere up high and then move down to a lower place. Gyromatic is a type of car part used in 1949 to 1955, and this book was written during that time, and so they're going to use the word gyromatic to describe the part of a car when they list off several cars that are no longer used today. And we'll be listening for some questions to answer. Number 1, Charlotte knew because she is a spider that if she waited patiently, food would come to her. Do you think a solution will always come to mind if you sit and wait? Number 2, why do you think this? Number 3, do you think Charlotte is smart? Number 4, why or why not? Number 5, Charlotte claims that people are very gullible. What does gullible mean? Number 6, do you think Charlotte was right? Do you think people are very gullible? Number 7, do you think it makes sense to always believe your eyes? And number 8, can you think of a time when you might not see correctly everything that is happening? Let's read chapter 10, An Explosion. Day after day, the spider waited, head down, for an idea to come to her. Hour by hour, she sat motionless, deep in thought. Having promised Wilbur that she would save his life, she was determined to keep her promise. Charlotte was naturally patient. She knew from experience that if she waited long enough, a fly would come to her web. And she felt sure that if she thought long enough about Wilbur's problem, an idea would come to her mind. So she felt sure that if she thought long enough about Wilbur's problems, an idea would come to her mind. Do you think if you sit and wait, an idea will always come to your mind? I think as people, it's important to ask questions and do research if we want an answer. Thinking can certainly help, but I think research and trying to find a solution is probably more likely to help than just waiting. Finally, one morning toward the middle of July, the idea came. "Why, how perfectly simple," she said to herself. "The way to save Wilbur's life is to play a trick on Zuckerman." "If I can fool a bug," thought Charlotte, "I can surely fool a man. People are not as smart as bugs." Wilbur walked into this yard just at this moment. "What are you thinking about, Charlotte?" said the spider. "That people are very gullible." What does gullible mean? "Easy to fool," said Charlotte. "That's a mercy," replied Wilbur, and he lay down in the shade of his fence and went fast asleep. The spider, however, stayed wide awake, gazing affectionately at him and making plans for his future. Summer was half gone. She knew she didn't have much time. That morning, just as Wilbur fell asleep, Avery Arable wandered into the Zuckerman's front yard, followed by Fern. Avery carried a live frog in his hand. Fern had a crown of daisies in her hair. The children ran for the kitchen. "Just in time for a piece of blueberry pie," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Look at my frog," said Avery, placing the frog on the drain board and holding out his hand for pie. "Take that thing out of here," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "He's hot," said Fern. "He's almost dead, that frog." "He is not," said Avery. "He lets me scratch him between the eyes." The frog jumped and landed in Mrs. Zuckerman's dishpan full of soapy water. "You're getting your pie on you," said Fern. "Can I look for eggs in the hen house, Aunt Edith?" "Run outdoors, both of you, and don't bother the hens." "It's getting all over everything," shouted Fern. "His pie is all over his front." "Come on, frog," cried Avery. He scooped up the frog. The frog kicked splashing soapy water onto the blueberry pie. "Another crisis," groaned Fern. "Let's swing in the swing," said Avery. The children ran to the barn. Mr. Zuckerman had the best swing in the county. It was a single long piece of heavy rope tied to the beam over the north doorway. At the bottom of the end of the rope was a fat knot to sit on. It was arranged so that you could swing without being pushed. You climbed a ladder to the hayloft. Then, holding the rope, you stood at the edge and looked down and were scared and dizzy. Then you straddled the knot so that it acted as a seat. Then you got up all your nerve, took a deep breath, and jumped. For a second, you seemed to be falling into the barn floor far below. But then suddenly the rope would begin to catch you, and you would sail through the barn door going a mile a minute, with the wind whistling in your eyes and ears and hair. Then you would zoom upward into the sky and look up at the clouds, and the rope would twist, and you would twist and turn with the rope. And then you would drop down, 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 out of the sky, and come sailing back into the barn, almost into the hayloft, and then sail out again, not quite as far this time, then in again, not quite so high, then out again, then in again, then out, then in, and then you jump off and fall down and let somebody else try it. Mothers for miles around worried about Zuckerman's swing. They feared some child would fall off, but no child ever did. Children almost always hang on to things tighter than their parents think they will. Avery put the frog in his pocket and climbed to the hayloft. "The last time I swung in this swing, I almost crashed into a barn swallow," he yelled. "Take that frog out," ordered Fern. Avery straddled the rope and jumped. He sailed out through the door, frog and all, and into the sky, frog and all. And then he sailed back into the barn. "Your tongue is purple!" screamed Fern. "So is yours!" cried Avery, sailing out again with the frog. What had made their tongue purple? The blueberry pie they ate? "I have hay inside my dress. It itches," called Fern. "Scratch it!" yelled Avery as he sailed back. "It's my turn," said Fern. "Jump off." "Fern's got the itch," sang Avery. When he jumped off, he threw the swing up to his sister. She shut her eyes tight and jumped. She felt the swing, felt the dizzy drop, and then the supporting lift of the swing. When she opened her eyes, she was looking up into the blue sky and was about to fly back through the door. They took turns for an hour. When the children grew tired of swinging, they went down toward the pasture and picked wild raspberries and ate them. Their tongues turned from purple to red. Fern bit into a raspberry that had a bad-tasting bug inside it and got discouraged. Avery found an empty candy box and put his frog in it. The frog seemed tired after his morning in the swing. The children walked slowly up toward the barn. They too were tired and hardly had enough energy to walk. "Let's build a tree house," suggested Avery. "I want to live in a tree with my frog." "I'm going to visit Wilbur," Fern announced. They climbed the fence into the lane and walked lazily toward the pig pen. Wilbur heard them coming and got up. Avery noticed the spider web, and coming closer, he saw Charlotte. "Hey, look at that big spider," he said. "It's tremendous." "Leave it alone," commanded Fern. "You've got a frog. Isn't that enough?" "That's a fine spider, and I'm going to capture it," said Avery. He took the cover off the candy box. Then he picked up a stick. "I'm going to knock that old spider into this box," he said. Wilbur's heart almost stopped when he heard what was going on. This might be the end of Charlotte if the boy succeeded in catching her. "You stop it, Avery!" cried Fern. Avery put one leg over the fence of the pig pen. He was just about to raise his stick to hit Charlotte when he lost his balance. He swayed and toppled and landed on the edge of Wilbur's trough. The trough tipped up and then came down with a slap. The goose egg was right underneath. There was a dull explosion as the egg broke, and then a horrible smell. Fern screamed. Avery jumped up to his feet. The air was filled with the terrible gases and smells from the rotten egg. Templeton, who had been resting in his home, scuttled away into the barn. "Good night!" screamed Avery. "Good night! What a stink! Let's get out of here!" Fern was crying. She held her nose and ran toward the house. Avery ran after her, holding his nose. Charlotte felt greatly relieved to see him go. It had been a narrow escape. Later that morning, the animals came up from the pasture. The sheep, the lambs, the gander, the goose, and the 7 goslings. There were many complaints about the awful smell, and Wilbur had to tell the story over and over again of how the Arable boy had tried to capture Charlotte, and how the smell of the broken egg drove him away just in time. "It was that rotten goose egg that saved Charlotte's life," said Wilbur. The goose was proud of her share in the adventure. "I'm delighted that the egg never hatched," she gabbled. Templeton, of course, was miserable over the loss of his beloved egg. But he couldn't resist boasting. "It pays to save things," he said in his surly voice. Remember his grouchy, surly voice? "A rat never knows when something is going to come in handy. I never throw anything away." "Well," said one of the lambs, "this whole business is all well and good for Charlotte, but what about the rest of us? The smell is unbearable. Who wants to live in a barn that is perfumed with rotten egg?" "Don't worry, you'll get used to it," said Templeton. He sat up and pulled wisely at his long whiskers, then crept away to pay a visit to the dump. When Lurvy showed up at lunchtime carrying a pail of food for Wilbur, he stopped short a few paces from the pig pen. He sniffed the air and made a face. "What in thunder?" he said, setting the pail down. He picked up the stick that Avery had dropped and pried the trough up. "Rats," he said. "Phew! I might have known a rat would make a nest under this trough. How I hate a rat." And Lurvy dragged Wilbur's trough across the yard and kicked some dirt into the rat's nest, burying the broken egg and all Templeton's other possessions. Then he picked up the pail. Wilbur stood in the trough, drooling with hunger. Lurvy poured the slops, and they ran creamily down around the pig's eyes and ears. Wilbur grunted. He gulped and sucked and gulped, making swishing and swishing noises, anxious to get everything at once. It was a delicious meal. Skim milk, wheat middlings, leftover pancakes, half a donut, the rind of a summer squash, 2 pieces of stale toast, a third of ginger snap, a fish tail, 1 orange peel, several noodles from a noodle soup, the scum off a cup of cocoa, an ancient jelly roll, a strip of paper from the lining of the garbage pail, and a spoonful of raspberry jello. Wilbur ate heartily. He planned to leave half a noodle and a few drops of milk for Templeton. Then he remembered that the rat had been useful in saving Charlotte's life, and that Charlotte was trying to save his life. So he left a whole noodle instead of a half. Now that the broken egg was buried, the air cleared and the barn smelled good again. The afternoon passed and evening came. Shadows lengthened. The cool and kindly breath of evening entered through the doors and windows. Astride her web, Charlotte sat moodily, eating a horsefly and thinking about the future. After a while, she bestirred herself. Do you remember what bestirred means? She got up from being still and moved to another place. She descended to the center of the web, and there she began to cut some of her lines. Why would she be cutting her lines? Would that be helpful to her web? She worked slowly but steadily while the other creatures drowsed. None of the others, not even the goose, noticed that she was at work. Deep in his soft bed, Wilbur snoozed. Over in their favorite corner, the goslings whistled a night song. Charlotte tore quite a section out of her web. What could she be doing? Leaving an open space in the middle. Can you get a picture in your head of what that would look like? Then she started weaving something to take the place of the threads she had removed. She's weaving something new, but it's not just a web. When Templeton got back from the dump around midnight, the spider was still at work. Let's move on and read Chapter 11, The Miracle. Chapter 11, The Miracle. The next day was foggy. Everything on the farm was dripping wet. The grass looked like a magic carpet. The asparagus patch looked like a silver forest. On foggy mornings, Charlotte's web was truly a thing of beauty. This morning, each thin strand was decorated with dozens of tiny beads of water. The web glistened in the light and made a pattern of loveliness and mystery like a delicate veil. Even Lurvy, who wasn't particularly interested in beauty, noticed the web when he came with the pig's breakfast. He noted how clearly it showed up, and he noted how big and carefully built it was. And then he took another look, and he saw something that made him set his pail down. There, in the center of the web, neatly woven in block letters, was a message. It said, "Some pig." Lurvy felt weak. He brushed his hand across his eyes and stared harder at Charlotte's web. So that's why she had pulled out some of the middle of her web. This part is the orb, and she left these radial lines, but she pulled out some of the orb so that she could put in SOMEPIG. Some pig. Do you think that would be possible in real life? Why do you think Charlotte did that? If you saw that, would you believe your eyes that that could really happen? "I'm seeing things," he whispered. Then he dropped to his knees and uttered a short prayer. Then, forgetting all about Wilbur's breakfast, he walked back to the house and called Mr. Zuckerman. "I think you'd better come down to the pig pen," he said. "What's the trouble?" asked Mr. Zuckerman. "Anything wrong with the pig?" Not exactly," said Lurvy. "Come and see for yourself." The two men walked silently down to Wilbur's yard. Lurvy pointed to the spider's web. "Do you see what I see?" he asked. Zuckerman stared at the writing on the web. Then he murmured the words, "Some pig." Then he looked at Lurvy. Then they both began to tremble. Charlotte, sleepy after her night's exertion, smiled as she watched. Wilbur came and stood directly under the web. "Some pig," muttered Lurvy in a low voice. "Some pig," whispered Mr. Zuckerman. They stared and stared for a long time at Wilbur. Then they stared at Charlotte. You don't suppose that spider," began Mr. Zuckerman, but he shook his head and didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he walked solemnly back up to the house and spoke to his wife. "Edith, something has happened," he said in a weak voice. He went into the living room and sat down, and Mrs. Zuckerman followed. "I've got something to tell you, Edith," he said. "You better sit down." Mrs. Zuckerman sank into a chair. She looked pale and frightened. "Edith," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I think you had best be told that we have a very unusual pig." A look of complete bewilderment came over Mrs. Zuckerman's face. "Homer Zuckerman, what in the world are you talking about?" she said. "This is a very serious thing, Edith," he replied. "Our pig is completely out of the ordinary." "What's unusual about the pig?" asked Mrs. Zuckerman, who was beginning to recover from her scare. "Well, I don't really know yet," said Mr. Zuckerman. "But we have received a sign, Edith, a mysterious sign. A miracle has happened on this farm. There is a large spider web in the doorway of the barn cellar, right over the pig pen, and when Lurvy went to feed the pig this morning, he noticed the web because it was foggy, and you know how a spider's web looks very distinct in the fog, And right spang in the middle of the web there are the words, "some pig." The words are woven right into the web. Were actually part of the web, Edith. I know because I've been down there and seen them. It says "some pig" just as clear can be. There can be no mistake about it. A miracle has happened and a sign has occurred here right on earth, right on our farm, and we have no ordinary pig. Well, said Mrs. Zuckerman, it seems to me you're a little off. It seems to me we have no ordinary spider. Oh no, said Mr. Zuckerman. It's the pig that's unusual. It says so right in the middle of the web. Maybe so, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Just the same, I intend to have a look at that spider. It's just a common gray spider, said Zuckerman. They got up, and together they walked down to Wilbur's yard. You see it, Edith? It's just a common gray spider. Wilbur was pleased to receive so much attention. Lurvy was standing there, and Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman, all three, stood for about an hour, reading the words on the web over and over, and watching Wilbur. Charlotte was delighted with the way her trick was working. She sat without moving a muscle and listened to the conversation of the people. When a small fly blundered into the web just beyond the word pig, Charlotte dropped quickly down, rolled the fly up, and carried it out of the way. After a while, the fog lifted, and the web dried off, and the words didn't show up so plainly. The Zuckermans and Lurvy walked back to the house. Just before they left the pig pen, Mr. Zuckerman took one last look at Wilbur. You know, he said in an important voice, I've thought all along that that pig of ours was an extra good one. He's a solid pig. That pig is as solid as they come. You notice how solid he is around the shoulders, Lurvy? Sure I do, said Lurvy. I've always noticed that pig. He's quite a pig. He's long and he's smooth, said Zuckerman. That's right, agreed Lurvy. He's as smooth as they come. He's some pig. When Mr. Zuckerman got back to the house, he took off his work clothes and put on his best suit. Then he got into his car and drove to the minister's house. Do you know what a minister is? A minister is a preacher or a reverend or a priest, a preacher who stands at the front of a church and talks to the congregation of the church. He stayed for an hour and explained to the minister that a miracle had happened on the farm. So far, said Zuckerman, only 4 people on earth know about this miracle. Myself, my wife Edith, and my hired man Lurvy, and you. Don't tell anybody else, said the minister. We don't know what it means yet, but perhaps if I give thought to it, I can explain it in my sermon next Sunday. There can be no doubt that you have the most unusual pig. I intend to speak about it in my sermon and point out the fact that this community has been visited by a wondrous animal. By the way, does the pig have a name? Why, yes, said Mr. Zuckerman. My little niece calls him Wilbur. She's a rather queer child, full of notions. She raised the pig on a bottle, and I bought him from her when he was a month old. He shook hands with the minister and left. Secrets are hard to keep. Long before Sunday came, the news spread all over the county, and everybody knew that a sign had appeared in a spider web on the Zuckermans' place. Everybody knew that the Zuckermans had a wondrous pig. People came from miles around to look at Wilbur and to read the words on Charlotte's web. The Zuckermans' driveway was full of cars, trucks and trucks from morning till night. Now they're going to list off the names of kinds of cars and trucks. Fords and Chevys, and Buick Roadmasters, and GMC pickups, and Plymouths and Studebakers and Packards and DeSotos with gyromatic transmissions, and Oldsmobiles with rocket engines, and Jeep station wagons and Pontiacs. The news of the wonderful pig spread clear up into the hills, and farmers came rattling down in buggies and buckboards to stand hour after hour at Wilbur's pen, admiring the miraculous animal. All said they had never seen such a pig before in their lives. When Fern told her mother that Avery had tried to hit the Zuckerman spider with a stick, Mrs. Arble was so shocked that she sent Avery to bed without any supper as a punishment. In the days that followed, Mr. Zuckerman was so busy entertaining visitors that he neglected his farm work. He wore his good clothes all the time now, got right into them when he got up in the morning. Mrs. Zuckerman prepared special meals for Wilbur. Lurvy shaved and got a haircut, and his principal farm duty was to feed the pig while people looked on. Mr. Zuckerman ordered Lurvy to increase Wilbur's feedings from 3 meals a day to 4 meals a day. Do you notice something that's changed for the pig? Now, instead of just getting 3 meals a day, now he's getting 4 meals a day. The Zuckermans were so busy with the visitors, they forgot about other things on the farm. The blackberries got ripe, and Mrs. Zuckerman failed to put up any blackberry jam. The corn needed hoeing, and Lurvy didn't find time to hoe it. On Sunday, church was full. The minister explained the miracle. He said that the words on the spider's web proved that human beings must always be on the watch for the coming of wonders. All in all, the Zuckerman's pig pen was the center of attraction. Fern was happy, for she felt that Charlotte's trick was working and that Wilbur's life would be saved. But she found that the barn was not nearly as pleasant. So even though something good's happening, what did she say? She found that the barn was not nearly as pleasant. That means it's not as fun to be there. Too many people. She liked it better when she could be all alone with her friends, the animals. I hope that you've enjoyed chapters 10 and 11 of Charlotte's Web. And I want to quickly show you the vocabulary words again, remind you what they mean. Gullible, someone who is easily fooled, someone who believes anything. Charlotte thought that people were gullible, that they would believe anything. It seems like she might be right. Surly, grouchy, rude, not nice. Templeton was surly because Avery broke his egg. Bestirred, to become active, to start moving after being still for a while. Charlotte sat very still while she ate her bug, thinking of a way to save Wilbur, but then she bestirred and descended and started moving again. Descend, to start somewhere high up and then move down to a lower place. Charlotte was high up in the barn door, but then she descended down to a lower place. Gyromatic, a type of car part that was used in Dodge cars transmissions from 1949 to 1955. And I hope that you were listening and that you were thinking about these questions. And please come back for video 8, where we will read chapters 12 and 13.